have breaking news coming out of Charlotte off Mint Street. The Carolina Panthers have officially backdoored the Minnesota Vikings and have signed the hottest defensive coordinator candidate on the market. Yes, the Panthers have officially agreed to terms with Ejiro Evero, the former defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Now, there's a lot of news that came out of this in a matter of 24 hours, so we have to fully break it down. And that's exactly what I'm going to get into, because this is a rock star home run hire for the Carolina Panthers and Frank Reich staff, who was just recently hired last week after agreeing to terms the week before that. We're going to get into all of that. But before we do, my name is Aaron Duncan here with the Necessary Blunt and Sports Talk. Start off all my videos by saying, what up, dude? And here I do recap and analysis of the Panthers. So if you want to see more videos about the squad, like news updates, film breakdowns, and draft content, subscribe down below and the bell icon. That way you get a notification every time I drop a video. But this Ejiro Evero news it really has me excited, especially if you know I'm making videos on a Sunday. This has to be big news because Ejiro Evero, he just recently got released from his contract with the Broncos. Technically, after Nathaniel Hackett got fired in his first year, Ejiro Evero still was under contract with the Broncos. The Broncos still had rights. Of course, the Sean Payton deal materialized. They traded for him from the New Orleans Saints, and they probably tried to do what they could to block as many interviews as possible because they wanted to kind of reconcile and hopefully keep Evero around. I don't know if there was some kind of loyalty or drama, or he felt slighted because they got rid of Hackett a little too early, so he wanted to leave. They released him from his contract, and of course, less than 24 hours later, he agrees to terms with the Panthers. Now, reports came out that he was going to interview with the Vikings and that he got requested by the Panthers. Remember, the Panthers did initially interview Evero during their head coaching search. He was not a finalist, but he was a guy that was on their list for the head coaching job. They talked to him. I'm not really sure how conversations went. I personally just thought it was a Rooney Rule requirement checkbox interview, but it is what it is. The market for the head coaching position is kind of filled up a little bit, and there's not really anything super ideal out there between the Colts and the Cardinals. So it looks like Evero is going to take another year off of being just a coordinator before he tries to make that big leap of being a head coach. Regardless, this is a huge hire for the Panthers because the Vikings had a lot of connections. The background of Evero and Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, goes all the way back to their days with the Rams. Both spent a couple seasons together coaching under Sean McVay, so they knew each other. The Vikings GM also spent time with Evero when he coached for the 49ers back in the day as well. So there was a lot of connections there. And with the Vikings being a team that had a lot of success this year record-wise, you would feel like, okay, hey, if they got something or even a slight improvement for their defense, they could be a championship contender. On the other hand, the Panthers have a young core. They're building something. Although they didn't have the best numbers on paper, you could see that this defense was the heart and soul of whatever turnaround they had on this year, and that there's bones and there's a good skeleton to be able to fill out. They just need proper coaching and fine tuning. And a guy like Evero is the perfect man for the job when you have guys like Derek Brown, Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin, J.C. Horn, a lot of young, talented players with speed and youth and juice, and that's exactly what Evero is. He's a 42-year-old defensive coordinator, and he spent some time coaching under Don Capers, Vic Fangio, and also Brandon Staley. Well, that's when he was with the Rams. So he runs a multiple style of defense, but he ran a 3-4 style of defense with the Broncos, and the proof is in the pudding. In his only year with the Broncos last year, he had these guys playing some great football, even with a trade of Bradley Chubb leaving to go to Miami and Randy Gregory being out. Let's look at some of these numbers. The Broncos were 7th in total defense and 14th in points allowed, only allowing 21 points per game. And they were 10th in DVOA, which is basically like a power ranking based off analytics that factors in the significance of the game, garbage time, or different scenarios. It really pretty much brings context to a lot of the defensive ranking stats, which is amazing because Pro Football Focus, who you guys love, had the Broncos at 8th overall, 4th in coverage. Not to mention Patrick Surtain II, the corner who was taken after J.C. Horn, was a Pro Bowler. So with Evero having a background coaching the secondary when he was under Staley with the Rams, He has experience, obviously, with Eric Weddle, Jalen Ramsey, that Patrick Surtain connection I just mentioned. What can he do with a guy like J.C. Horn, who's already on the cusp of being elite? Can he help take him to the next level? Or a guy like Jeremy Chin, who tended to get played out of position, who has some skills, doesn't really need to be a linebacker, in my opinion, just because of the lack of size, but clearly doesn't need to be guarding wide receivers like Al Holcomb had him doing, because that's not his ministry as well. Can he get the best out of Jeremy Chin? Because that 3-4 scheme and what he does, he takes a lot of different pieces from the systems that he coached under, like Wade Phillips or Don Capers or Vic Fangio. These are legends in the NFL, so he'll bring a lot of different experience and a lot of youth. He's 42 years old, like I said, so he's going to have that juice. He always talks about having that connection with the players because he's that younger, a youthful coach. But his philosophy, we'll get into that a little bit more probably in another video, but Evero believes in pressuring the quarterback, and it starts and ends with that. He knows that as a guy that formerly coached in the secondary, that you're only going to be as good as your front four, because the quicker they get to the quarterback, the less time the secondary has to guard their man. So he believes in pressure, 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 and I'm super excited about this, because if we do run that 3-4, can you imagine Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns as the stand-up guys coming off the edge? Hell, you can even maybe keep YGM around if you wanted to and leave him inside as a 3-4 guy. Who knows? And Derek Brown commanding that inside of that line on the 3-4. Oh, man, I'm salivating at the mouth right now. This is a rock star hire for Frank Reich. We don't have an offensive coordinator yet, but to be able to snag the hottest defensive coordinator candidate outside of Vic Fangio is perfect, because he's just a disciple of Vic Fangio anyway. So the Panthers last year was 22nd ranked by Pro Football Focus and 28th in DVOA. I think any improvement to about middle of the pack, if not top 10, it really shortens the gap for that offense. So if we bring in a young quarterback, it gives a lot more room for error. A lot of times this year, our offense was just so bad, the defense might have started out hot, but they got fatigued because they were on the field so long. They had short fields based off of turnovers, and being able to carry the weight of the team is just tough. But having a good defense allows you to have a lot more room for error. We've heard Frank Reich talk about it starts and ends with having an elite defense, because it makes the job easier for the offense. And this is a first step in that philosophy. This is a phenomenal hire by Frank Reich, and good job by David Tepper, because I'm not even sure they allowed him to make it to Minnesota. They put that old Matt Rule sweet meatball magic on him, where you offer him, you lock him in a room, give him whatever he wants, and don't allow him to get on that plane to go to another interview. It worked this time. There should be no expense. There should be no expense too big for this coaching staff. David Tepper and Frank Reich have preached, we're going to get the best coaches, have the best coaching staff. It's time for have some action, and this was the action. So I got to give David Tepper his credit, Scott Fitterer his credit, and Frank Reich his credit, because I was skeptical, because it had been taking a little minute to see who these coaches were, but this first step is huge. The job's not finished, though. We need to see who's going to be the offensive coordinator for this team. It better not be no Jim Bob Cooter, because Jim Bob Cooter ain't it. We can talk about that a little bit more as well. But Evero will be a good addition. But how long he'll be around, who knows? Because he was that hot of a candidate this head coaching cycle. We know defensive coaches, they kind of get the short end of the stick. So maybe he's a year, maybe another 2 years. But regardless, if he's here 2 years with the Panthers and then they lose him to a head coaching position, they will be compensated for with a third-round pick and draft capital because of the Rooney Rule. He has to be here at least 2 years, though, not one. So keep that in mind. But he could be gone as soon as next year, especially if he does a good job with this young Panthers defense. I think the proof will be in the pudding that he deserves to be a head coach. I honestly thought he deserved a lot more looks this offseason, but that's neither here nor there. You guys let me know down below in the comments how you feel about this hire of Ejiro Evero, and what do you think he can bring to this defense? What are your expectations for this defense now that we have the second hottest, if not the hottest, defensive coordinator candidate that was on the market? And shout out to the Vikings. So sorry for you. But without further ado, my name is Aaron Duncan here at the Necessary Bluntly Sports Talk. I'll see you next time. Peace.